evening. I'm Al Kinsal, and I'm here with Dave Hersant. And this is a conversation with Martin T. Olsen. Good evening, Marty. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to a good conveation here this evening.
We're going to have that at least.
We're going to have a conversation.
It'll be good.
What's been going on since the election of 2011?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I've been doing a lot of volunteer work. I read, well, the Reading is Fundamental program to preschoolers, primarily at Balestrini's in Waterford, Jordan area, and that's with the Kiwanis Club, which I'm very active in, and that keeps me very busy in a variety of capacities. I'm also tutoring at Northern High School 3 afternoons a week. As a matter of fact, I spend time working with your wife Adele, and so she's putting in her time as well. Which is primarily an athletic program with athletes that we're working with and trying to keep them on the straight and narrow so that they're maintaining a good grade point average so they can not only stay on the team but hopefully excel and do well and prepare themselves. For those who know me know that I'm an avid sports fan and I go to an awful lot of...
No, not really.
A fair amount of sporting events. Different types. As a matter of fact, this weekend I'll be going down to Hamden on Friday night to see Yale and #1 Quinnipiac University in ice hockey. And then on Saturday I'm meeting a buddy of mine who is a classmate, as a matter of fact, from high school, who will meet me in New Haven, who's a Harvard alum, and we'll go to the Yale-Harvard basketball game on Saturday evening. So.
Oh, so you're getting around anyway.
I try to. No grass is growing under my feet.
In New London, how do you feel about the way the city's been going over the past year under the new...
Are we talking general government? Are we talking education, or a little bit of both?
Well, let's talk a little bit of both.
Well, let's start with the new administration. Coming out of the gate, it was, I think to a large degree, it's still been rather breathtaking. And I use that term charitably. I mean, it's been... I think it's been a lot different than I think most would have expected. Starting with the day after the election, with the pronouncement that the referendum question here, the mayor-elect was going to basically not do the will of the people, which I think caught a lot of people off guard. And you know, and I'll be very honest. I mean, I think that. Mayor Finizio certainly, coming out of the election, had an exorbitant amount of goodwill and political capital at his disposal. I think to a large degree, in many quarters, much of that has been lost or squandered. But I also recognize that he still has a hardcore level of support. It's not like it's all dissipated. But I think that there was an opportunity to be had to bring New London together, and I don't necessarily see that that's been the case. And I think that's been unfortunate.
An example, though, that you would bringing the community together. What's an example that's you think is failing?
One that comes to mind quickly, and it was to a degree highlighted in the paper again. Actually, not the paper, Patch this morning, dealing with New London Main Street. I mean, the mayor was hell-bent on removing Penny Parsekian, and he ultimately got his way. And the leverage he used was the budget for the organization. You're not going to play my way, or we won't fund you. And they initially didn't play ball, and they didn't get funded to the level they were expecting. And I think that was most unfortunate. I mean, there's an organization that I think does significant good work, and one of its biggest strengths is its vast cadre of volunteers. And if we have that organization go away, you know, that core of volunteers will go other places to look for things to do. And I think that would be a great loss to New London. And again, I mentioned Patch this morning. It was reported that the mayor is considering withholding funds from Main Street and the New London Public Library for the fourth quarter. He calls it discretionary monies for the purpose of perhaps funding other areas of government, and doing it without council approval. And this gets back to a concern I have that almost coming out of the gate, and it's been an ongoing and persistent push by the administration to marginalize the city council, and I think that they've got a very strong role to play.
Has any of the city councilors expressed their opinion regarding this?
On this, Councilor Passero was quoted in the story. As I recall, I didn't bring it in with me this evening, that there weren't any others. And this was in response to an opinion that was generated by Attorney Jeff Londrigan, who's the quote-unquote city attorney. And again, as things are evolving, I would argue that it may be prudent for the council to consider getting its own counsel. Because it appears to me that, and if you look at how things have evolved this past year, when opinions have been rendered where there may be a conflict between the administration and the council, Attorney Londrigan is inevitably giving an opinion supporting the mayor's position.
That sounds like the same situation that the Board of Education went through when City Council wanted to merge the legal departments, Board of Ed and City Council. And we had that same argument. That,
and I mean, there are those on the council currently who would argue, well, he's the city attorney and he represents all of us. But I think that the actions are speaking differently, and it may be prudent to consider alternative counsel for the council. And these are some of the unintended consequences and expenses that may be incurred that weren't thought of when we were putting together this new form of government.
And we'll come back to that. We have a call. Good evening. You're on a conversation with Marty Olsen.
Good evening, guys. This is Dennis from the Lane. I'm sorry to call so soon, but Marty came out with a bang on this conversation, and I want to talk about it real quick before I forget some of the things I want to say. I went back into the charter and I looked up 39B, which is what the city attorney is going by. And nowhere in that section does it say anything about the mayor being able to touch line items the way this lawyer is saying that the mayor can. Now, I'm sure if you're a lawyer, you can take a charter section and twist it around any way you want to make it fit what you're looking for. But this isn't the way the charter was meant to be. Second, when Marty was just talking about New London Main Street, this is something that's going on the council right now as we speak. I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but it's about time I express my opinion on it. You had a change on the council of who's going to be in charge of the administration department. Administration department goes over and elects people or appoints people to be on boards and agencies. You have Mr. Councilor Heislip that is now the administrative chair, I guess you would call him. Now, he's going to have the power through his group to pick who they want to be on what boards and what committees. And you see right now that they're getting rid of certain people that they claim have been on too long under the idea that we need to give everybody a chance. That's a bunch of crap. Now, you have 3 people on the council, in my opinion, and I'm speaking just for myself, with Councilor Heislip, Councilor Nolan, and Councilor McCrean, that constantly vote the way the mayor wants them to vote. So you have, I believe, a thing going on in the city to where the mayor is setting things up so that he can run the city without any opposition, whatever way he wants. And if the people in the city don't wake up and make some changes to this council, we're going to be even worse off than we were 5 years ago with the way the council was. Marty, I really hope you give some consideration to running for the council again. You're a good man. You need you back on that council.
Thank you very much for your.
That was my speech.
Thank you for your kind words.
And thank you for the call.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, there's a little bit of feedback for you.
Well, that's a little positive feedback. How about that? There's one.
Well, it is, but, you know, it's funny because the administration wants to change members of the agencies and boards. It gives other people. And Reverend Highsliff is the one who's pushing this from the council point of view. And I'm saying, well, have you ever heard of term limits? Are you not going to run in November? If you're asking everyone else to get out on a short stick, are you going to do the same thing?
Yep. Well,
the other argument is the people that they're replacing on these various boards and agencies, for example, planning zoning, are they actually qualified,
Well,
or are they political?
That's the key.
And what we're seeing in the real estate industry is that, and it's not only just in London, it's across the entire board, that people are not qualified to make a decision that costs developers, builders, much more money than is actually required in order to go in and develop, let's say a 10-plot piece of land and put up property, houses on it and so forth. And they're causing developers to jump through hoops because either it's their thing or it's a good thing to do, and it's really not the developer's business to do those kind of things.
This is something that bothers me in New London specifically, because that's where we live.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be anywhere, because people have choices where they're going to live, where they're going to work, where they're going to invest, where they're going to open up businesses, develop. And if the community that you're working in or live in is putting up such high hurdles, they can go to Waterford or Montville.
Well, that
or
could be
New Hampshire or Kansas or anywhere.
It could be one of the reasons why our development is so lacking.
As opposed to being
robust and
being progressive, to use that term, in terms of trying to create an environment that is positive, that's going to be helpful. And a lot of that will stem too, and it's something I campaigned on when I ran for mayor, is the need for a very strong educational system, because without that as the backbone of your community, it makes all other things that you work on exceptionally difficult to accomplish. I mean, it's almost that you can't, but it makes it very, very hard, especially with a community with a lot of children. This is not a retirement community.
Well, that's just to amplify that one more time. That's one of the contentions from Baumanoff, the schoolmaster appointed by the state in New London, is that the Board of Education is incompetent. And so as that filters down, how do you expect things to work? It's a $42 million a year business, and you've got 7 people that haven't got a clue of what they're doing. And it's nice that they want to volunteer. I commend them for that. But there's more to being on the Board of Education, and certainly on the council.
It's called getting educated.
As showing up on a Thursday, Monday, or Thursday afternoon for a meeting.
Let's sort of get back to where we were before the phone call.
Sure.
What would you have done differently that you've seen since the election? You've seen things going on, and that's really not in the best interest of the city or of its population.
Well, I mean, to a degree, it's moot because we've got what the people elected and what they wanted, and we're going to have to live with that. And but that doesn't necessarily mean, at least from my perspective, that it goes unchecked. Or that you get a free ride. I think that it's incumbent upon the community to hold the entire government's feet to the fire. I mean, I'm an absolute believer that we as a community, and actually at all levels, get as good a government as we demand. And if we don't demand much, we sure as hell don't have a lot to cry about.
Right.
So it's up to us as a community to make things happen that benefits all of us for our best interest as a community. That's one of the things I find interesting with the current dynamic is that this is not a partisan problem we're dealing with here. You've got a Democratic mayor, and you've got a 6-to-1 Democratic council. So these are all Democrats. So it's not like you've got 4 or 5 Republicans on the council that are, in a partisan way, throwing sand in the gears of the mayor. They're the loggerheads from within. And I find that it makes for interesting reading, but I don't necessarily think it makes for good government.
Right.
And as far as what would I do differently, I mean, I think it's important to try to be to work with people. Now, when I served as mayor, you were president of the board, and we opened a dialogue early, and I thought we tried to keep a line of communication open.
That's right.
And I think that was beneficial. I mean, it was a bit more hostile the year before.
A bit.
So, I mean, I think that part of the deal here is you got need to be honest with people and try to work together. It's not a one-man deal here. You got to go to the council and say, look, I mean, what's important to you guys? This is where I want to go. How are we going to make this work? If you look at it, the role of council is kind of like the role of Congress, and the mayor's like the president.
Right.
And if you go down to Washington, if you were to tell a congressman or a senator that they're irrelevant, I think they'd get a little bit upset. And I think you're seeing a little of that here at the local level with our council. It's kind of like, who the heck does this guy think he is, just kind of running roughshod on us?
We're having a conversation with Marty Olsen, and the phones are open. The number here is 860-440-3154. So if you have a question you'd like to ask Marty, or if you have an opinion or a gripe, call in. We'll be glad to listen.
One thing I'd like to mention, Al, if you don't mind, just for the benefit of your viewers, is that we've got 3 gentlemen here who have all served as town chairman of the Northern Republican Party, and how we've all kind of moved in different directions over the course of time here. But we do have that common thread, and it was 29 years ago, coming up this fall, and you were living on School Street, and I responded to a flyer that came in the mail, a piece of paper like this from the GOP, and it said, "Help."
Gee, maybe they need to resurrect that again.
I kid you not, it was just an 8.5 by 11 and a stamp on it, and but timing was everything. And I remember going down to your home and visiting and talking with you and your wife and Velita Grills.
Yeah.
And over the course of that conversation, this is in the fall of 1984, and saying that maybe in some point in the future, like maybe like now, maybe I'd like to run for city council. And lo and behold, that fall in '85, there I am. So
Well, you had far better luck than I did. I went out of the gate twice and didn't finish, so...
I didn't win that first time. I've run 6 times for council, and I'm batting 500. And it's very, very difficult for Republicans to achieve electoral success in London. You have to work exceptionally hard. You have to. I think the party needs good candidates, and you need people who are willing to do above and beyond the call of duty to be successful. And that's due, to the extraordinary registration advantage the Democrats enjoy.
Sure. Yeah. We had touched lightly on committees and commissions, and Dave mentioned the fact that Councilor Heislip is demanding that they have to reapply. How do you really feel about that?
Well, historically, in the absence of a written limit or term limit into the particular position, most people have kind of rolled along. I mean, you've served on the pension committee. I don't know if you've served on any board or agency.
I was on the personnel board.
Personnel board, excuse me.
25 years.
But I mean, that's a long time. But I mean, you served well, you served diligently, and when your terms expired, you were reappointed.
There was a city manager appointment.
Yeah. And there are different appointments made by different, whether it's the mayor now or the council or by the mayor with council advice and consent.
That's a new one. What is that?
Well,
It's a roadblock.
but you know, last year the administration committee chair was John Maynard, Councilor Maynard.
Right.
And this past year they shook things up a little bit, and Councilor Heislip has gotten this new post. And I think one thing that we need to be clear on is ultimately the council will vote on these. So the committee, which is comprised of 3 members of the council, may come up with A, B, or C for whatever they're doing, but it still needs to be approved by the city council. Now, when I served between 2009 and 2011, Adams Procacci was the administration committee chair, and man, was he an exceptionally detailed guy. I mean, he wouldn't allow anything to come up for consideration without an application. And he had done in-depth research in terms of when terms were expiring and what vacancies there were, and trying to get people involved. And it's, I must say, too, it's exceptionally challenging to get people willing to step up and serve. It's not where there's this giant pool of people that are begging to do this.
Why do they want to take this abuse?
And it's a, I think people would be shocked at how few that are actually willing to step up for whatever reason. You know, I can see where the mayor is cultivating people who have perhaps not been involved in government in the past, whether they're younger people or people who've been kind of not locked in with the powers to be or power brokers. And to a degree, I think that's good. You're getting new people involved. But I don't think that means you should exclude others as well. Again, this is a case of trying to encourage everybody to get involved. Makes for a stronger community.
Well, unless you've got someone who's really burning to get on, what we've found is that the population is aging. And those people who were full of dynamite 10 years ago are now limping along, and they just don't have the time. You know, it's a hell of a commitment. I sit as treasurer of the board of trustees for the library. I'm on the ethics commission. But I have the time that I can devote to these institutions. But otherwise, it's very, very difficult. We get some people, and they come on, and they're on 2 or 3 months, and I regret that we've been transferred the job, this, that, and what have you. So it's a limited pool.
It's very challenging.
And as we indicated before, as we started the show, is that you have to have people on boards that they have the education to be on the board. Or the agency. I mean, it's just not...
Otherwise, it's not doing the city any justice.
Well, but you mentioned the ethics board. Now, here's a board that right now, you've had some recent resignations, and you've had somebody who recently passed away. And I know that they're having an extraordinarily difficult time filling these positions. And without those positions filled, it makes it difficult for you to do your job. Or if you can do your job. I'm not even sure that you can with the amount of people you've got serving right now.
Well, I think we're scooting right on by, but that brings up an interesting point, and not only for our commission, but for any commission, that you should be able to say you have 7 positions, 7 members of the board, and you need the 5 for this and that. And it's just saying the number of people who show up should be your base, because we go month after month. We don't have a theoretical quorum. We have a quorum to conduct business, a certain segment of the business by code, but you can't get into other avenues or other expressions because you don't have, you know, the 5 that's necessary to get in. So it's a problem.
Yeah, but one thing I wanted to discuss, which ties into this conversation, but beyond the boards and agencies, is city employment.
Okay.
And that is, since the election, and candidate Finizio was campaigned on openness and transparency and bringing in the best and the brightest. And I think a lot of folks bought into that. That sounds really good. I mean, if he's able to deliver on that, that'll be a major accomplishment. But I think at least coming out of the gate here this first year plus, We have seen perhaps more of the same, but with a different group of people. I mean, as opposed to it being the quote-unquote old boy Democrats, now we kind of got Darrell's folks that he's bringing in. Not necessarily recruiting and looking outside of the community for the best and the brightest. And I'd just like to, this is a very current example I'd like to use, if you don't mind.
Sure, right ahead.
This was in this past Sunday's paper, 17th of the day, Careers, and the town of Waterford is advertising for an assistant director of public works. I want to emphasize assistant. Oversees and performs professional engineering services of town projects. Assist director in all phases in his or her duties. Requires a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering or construction management. 5 years experience in highway design and inspection. Civil engineer in training or ability to obtain within 3 years of hire. Now, that's for the assistant, and that's in our next-door community in Waterford.
Right.
Those qualifications, our director of public works doesn't qualify for. Now, our director is a bright guy, but he was a scientist advisor. But he has no qualifications in the area of public works. But he was the campaign manager for the Green Party. Green Party endorsed Darrell. He gets a job.
That's politics.
Well, it may be politics, but it's not what he campaigned on. He told everybody, we're going to go out and get the best and the brightest. And I would argue that this is not necessarily seeking out the best and the brightest. And the gentleman who held the job, Keith Chapman, had been a city manager in Newington. The guy had run a community. And he was, he was one of the first people to get shoved out.
He did a good job.
Yeah, I thought he did an outstanding job.
Right.
Gail McKissick, the city manager's administrative assistant. I mean, she was summarily dismissed. Now she's been rehired, working for the city council, doing similar work. But to a degree, you could argue that now we've got a repetition in terms of jobs here. We've got she could be doing the same service with the mayor and doing what she did for the council that she's always done for the council.
Sure. Right.
But and she's not political. She is competent, and the institutional knowledge she's got is tremendous.
That's very important too. Yeah.
And the thank you get is, well, we don't need you. And bring in campaign people. That may be politics, but is that what we're looking for? I don't think that's what the community.
It sounds like that's something that if you would have won, you would have done a little differently.
Well, I had made this statement on stage at the high school, the last debate, that the first thing I would have done after the election would have been to sit down with Bernadette Welch in personnel and develop a job description and a search for the quote-unquote chief of staff position, which is what Jane Glover currently holds. I'm not quite sure what her qualifications are for this job. But to get a professional, I mean, when this job was created, it was designed to have somebody with strong public administration background and skills, kind of like a city manager, to run the day-to-day operations of the city. At the moment, I would argue we don't have that.
Right. Do you see anything that could possibly change the direction that we're going in right now?
Well, we have a big gut check coming up this fall. It's called an election. It's municipal elections. The city council and school board will be up for election, so all 7 seats will be up for both bodies. I think that this will give a big window into people's feeling of the performance of the city, the administration, and the council as individually and collectively. Now, if we end up with a new council elected this fall that is you might say, representative of Mayor Finizio. I would say that that's sending a pretty strong signal to the community. The community thinks he's doing a great job,
Yeah.
and they want to give him people to speed up what he's trying to do. And however, if you may get some folks who have maybe different opinions or think that perhaps some rational pushback, I'll call it. I don't think the pushback for the sake of pushing back serves any useful purpose. But we need, at least from my perspective, folks who are willing to stand up and be counted if they think that things aren't going correctly. And if they think they are, to get out there and bang the drum. How about working for our community? Something unique, something new and exciting.
I know elections are a long way away, but in times of time, they're not that far down the road.
Oh, they're coming up like this.
And what is the, I don't get out enough, but what is the preliminary feeling of the constituents? Are we happy? Do you think
I think it depends on who you're talking to. I mean, I know people who think that the mayor's doing a bang-up job, and they just don't understand they probably don't understand my commentary tonight. There are others who are sitting out there going, hey, this is,
Well, everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Absolutely. And I don't look at this. I think we need to start looking at things. How do we, what's our agenda and how we're going to get from point A to point B? And we all know the quickest way is a straight line. And if we can keep these deviations to a minimum, we can get something done. And we've spent the better part of a year dealing with transition and not moving forward.
Right.
The prior council had a lot of projects and things I thought were very positive that were moving in a very strong fashion. And much of that has come to a grinding halt during transition. And whether or not some of this stuff will get picked up or not, I don't know.
Hopefully it'll bubble to the surface. Yeah.
I mean,
All right, let's go to the calls. Good evening, you're on a conversation with Marty Olsen.
Good evening, gentlemen. I have a couple of questions for you. Earlier you were alluding to the hoops that people have to go through for economic development and that type of thing. And my question is, who is actually overseeing economic development in New London now? How does the Coast Guard Museum fit in as far as who's looking into that and trying to finally secure that to take place? And my second question, just as an aside, is I noticed that Lawrence Memorial Hospital has been buying up a lot of property over the past few years for doctors' offices or whatever. And I was just wondering, is that property now coming off the tax rolls, or is that still taxable property, even though a nonprofit organization owns it? I'll hang up and listen to your answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the call.
well, let's start with number one, with the L&M. They did buy one, I think it's 194 Howard Street, the office
Right.
building.
Yeah, they're renovating that now.
And they are renovating that, and I think the intent is to set up doctors' offices in there, and I do not believe that that has been established, whether that's going to be taxable or tax exempt. I mean, I'm under the impression, and this is not fact, I want to preface that the hospital is going to look to have that as a tax exempt property, and I'm sure that the city will attempt to make it a fully taxable property. In much the same way we're dealing with Electric Boat and the former Pfizer property, where EB is trying to get a reduction in their assessment. I mean, they're looking out for their interest. We have to look out for our interest. I mean, that's I think that's the cost of doing business, and I don't begrudge that. As far as some of the other things, I mean, the L&M built a large parking lot behind recovery room.
Right.
And I don't know if that's being used right now. I don't see that gate open there.
I haven't seen it used yet.
And I'm not sure what the problem is there. And as far as other things, I think I'd have to do more research. I don't know beyond these kind of two larger projects that L&M has got going on. The initial question had to do with who's handling development, is that correct?
Correct.
Who's driving the bus?
Well, I think it depends on where it is. We have a new individual, Kristen Clark, who has been hired by Mayor Fernanzio to head the development office. Again, that's a position that was filled when there was no funding for it. It's amazing how that happened, but she's got the charge of running our development office, and there are a variety of different things that are involved in the process. Sometimes it's planning and zoning, or zoning board of appeals, inland wetlands, things of that nature. You get the building department, the fire department, and things of all this types of things that have to be evaluated with the project. In theory, though, the head of that office would be your initial go-to to help get you through the minefield.
Now, who's driving it as far as council?
Let's see. I believe it's Adam Spracacci, Councilor Spracacci.
Okay. And the last question he had was on the Coast Guard.
I wasn't clear on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell whether he was talking about the.
I think it's a dead issue.
Yeah, well, the Coast Guard museum. That's what I thought he was talking about.
Well, if he's discussing the museum, I'll make this statement because I can speak from fact, and that is when I served as mayor, I had the opportunity to meet and discuss 3 times at different functions with Admiral Papp, and over the course of conversation to ask him, as close as I'm sitting to you, about the Coast Guard Museum. And my initial conversation, I inquired about Fort Trumbull, and Admiral Papp was exceptionally clear. And I might add, he's a Norwich guy, so he's familiar with the area and the terrain. It's nice to have a local guy who's understands what's going on here. But he told me unequivocally that he supports a museum and he supports New London. And at that time, he was not willing to stick his neck out on a location, whether it be the fort, downtown, campus.
Right.
And the way I look at it is, I mean, I may have preferences, but ultimately, if we're in New London, I like that idea, period. I think that's be good for New London.
Right. Yeah, it would be a destination.
Absolutely.
For people to come to the city. We have another call. Good evening, you're on the air with Marty Olsen.
Hey guys, this is Dennis again.
Yes.
You were just talking about the Chief Administrative Office. I want to give you a little background on that as far as the charter goes. When we thought of this position, the reasoning behind it for a lot of us was that the mayor would be doing business in Hartford, possibly Washington, so when he wasn't in town, Chief Administration Officer would run the city day-to-day business. Now, it says in the charter that the Chief Administrative Officer shall be appointed on the basis of substantial executive and administration experience, qualifications, and knowledge. Now, and we also had thought that the Personnel Board would go out and get people to put in for this job, and the mayor would have some kind of a list to pick from. Whether there was a list for him to pick from or not, I have no idea. So if you take what it says, the administration officer's qualifications are, that's what the charter says they should be. How you break that down, and since the mayor picks the person, I guess you could twist somebody's, qualifications to fit this. It probably should have been more clear, but I just wanted to let you guys know that. And I'll hang up and keep listening.
All right, thank you for the call.
Thank you for your input.
Yeah.
I might add, our caller served on the Charter Commission at...
Yeah, we know Dennis.
Yeah, but Dennis has a command of the subject.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's absolutely necessary if we're going to have these conversations.
After I've heard from several sources that there may be a need to even have another charter revision to clean up a lot of the language.
Well, that's been brought up twice in this term, and it's been rejected by council. And I think they're afraid that, because once you open the charter up, you might want to have it open for this, and you may get all of that.
But they still have control. The council has control and can reject all of that and still stick to their one thing or two things that they want to have done.
That is true.
Yeah.
But
if they have the intestinal fortitude.
But it's challenging. It's challenging for the Charter Commission, and it's challenging for council as well.
Right.
But I think there's a paranoia right now that if they were to open the charter for whatever, that it could get back into a form of government discussion. And I think there are some folks that are very nervous about that, and they don't want to take that chance. I mean, it's come up in discussion with Dr. Adamowski in education. The fact that our school board are on 2-year terms and they all run concurrently, and that we have no...
There should be some
it's not staggered.
continuity.
So
Even on council, there should be some continuity so that you don't...
I mean, we've got board training going on. I sat in on a couple of days of training 2 or 3 weeks ago, and 2 members weren't in attendance. And with the election coming up, you don't know who's going to win or lose.
Right.
I mean, you may have trained people who, come December, may not be there for whatever reason. They don't get elected. They don't run.
Right.
And won't derive that benefit.
Yeah. Let's switch our gears now a little bit to national level.
Sure.
Help. What do you contribute the GOP's losses in this past national election?
I think the GOP needs to, it's the same issue that we have most locally. You need to have a good candidate, and you need to have a good message. And I don't necessarily think that Romney was a real stellar candidate, and I would question their message. I really would. And then you had a couple of outliers making rather outrageous statements who are running for U.S. Senate, I believe, and out in the Midwest someplace, regarding abortion and rape that were... He gave people an opportunity to wrap their arm and say, that's mainstream Republican. And it's not, but it's the type of thing that gets, you don't need that as part of your package, your discussion, and it's not what the Republican Party represents. And,
but isn't this part of the problem? At every election cycle, the candidates agree to be above board, not throw mud at each other, and those words have yet to fall on the ground before, this, that, the next thing, and the mudslinging starts, and the faults and the half-truths, and all you need is a bomb thrower like that. Like this one, abortion is... the women, their body will adjust and take care of itself. Well, I don't know where you've been, but I've never seen that happen. So the message, we're not a conservative environment any longer, and they just keep pushing the wrong buttons.
Well, they have at the presidential level. They certainly have, in the last 2 election cycles, giving President Obama his due. I mean, he is I think he addresses his audience well. He connects.
He articulates his issues very well.
He does. I mean, that was a key to the success of Darrell Finenzio running for mayor. He connected with a constituency of many people who had not been involved before, and they gravitated to him and elected him. And just take a half a step back locally, though, and this is an area where I think that our mayor is overestimating his success in the election. In that he did, in fact, and in round numbers, he beat Pirro and Bisetto, roughly 2-to-1, maybe even a little bit better than 2-to-1. And then you throw myself and Laurie Hopkins and Lockwood, and we were light years behind. But if you add up everybody's votes that didn't run against him, it's like a tie. So that my point being is that half the people in the community did not vote for him. So it's not as if he just squashed his two prime competitors, and he ought to look at, geez, half the people I didn't reach. How can I get these people on board here? And pushing them away, I don't think is the way to do it.
Yeah. Where do you think the GOP is going?
At what level?
Well, let's talk about the national level. Let me preface my question. Back a few years, the Tea Party became in existence. They seem to have controlled the strings of the Republican Party.
I think that's in pockets at the national level. I don't think the Tea Party is controlling things in Connecticut, for instance. I mean, there's a presence, but it's not a controlling presence.
Well, they're controlling Congress right now, in the House of Representatives, because
and
otherwise,
how many Republicans from Connecticut? None.
well, exactly. But I'm speaking in generalities. Okay, as far as nationally, where do you think the GOP is actually headed, given the fact that the Tea Party now, and that there's very strong members of Congress who are now speaking up against the Tea Party. Do you think that there will be any successes there?
I think that there may be. I mean, one thing I think we lose sight of is that the Republican Party controls the House. They have a significant majority of governorships throughout the country. I think it's 3-2. So the Republican message is resonating in many places. Not so much in Connecticut or New England in general or the Northeast. So maybe we can tend to look at things through our very narrow blinders and say, well, the Republican Party doesn't exist. Maybe here it doesn't.
Well, that's my next question. What do you think's happening on the local level?
I think there's an opportunity locally with the municipal elections coming up this fall. Because of the level of drama and turmoil that we've experienced this last 15 months. And if this is to continue. However, for the GOP to achieve success, it's going to have to nominate good candidates and have a good message. And I think that no taxes may not be a message that's honest.
That's put delicately. I like that.
Well, I mean, look, I'm going to be very blunt, and if I upset my friend Councilor Pirro, so be. I mean, the mayoral campaign, he campaigned on a pledge of no tax hikes for 2 years. Now, I wouldn't subscribe to that, and I didn't, and I called him on it. I said, this sounds a lot like read my lips, and he didn't like that. Now, I would never have come forth with a 20% hike like our mayor did, which I thought was equally irresponsible. And the mayor was in office when he did it. But I think you have to be honest with people. I mean, how are we going to accomplish some of these goals? What are we going to do? And just treading water isn't enough. I mean, you can't. We need more leadership from the majority right now, which is the Democrats. And if the Republicans are going to chip away at that or be a real conscience, they've got to have some legitimate ideas. And just saying no isn't what I would call legitimate.
That's correct. Yep.
I've always tried to be for things. I mean, you can point out what you think are deficiencies, but have a plan to move forward. I don't think we can do this, but let's try that. Let's move. We can accomplish our goals doing this, whatever it may be, and try to make your ideas, win on the strength of your ideas.
We have 2 minutes left. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do have one other question I want to ask you.
You do?
Do you see yourself running this October, November?
Well, I'm not running in October.
I've been out of the game for a while, so I forgot the month.
I'll be honest with you. I've had a number of people who are encouraging me to run. I'm flattered. I have not made any decisions. It's, from my perspective, it's a little early. I really don't feel a need to make a decision this second. But I certainly have enjoyed serving. I enjoy being in the middle of the fray. That's I think I've been evident by how I conduct myself when I've been in there. But I think when we get a little bit closer to the time when there's nominations, it'll be a more appropriate time to make that ultimate decision.
Okay.
So that's called. Call me in what's it, July or?
Usually August.
We're out of time.
I know Dennis is encouraging me, so there's one.
You got that one. We're out of time, and it's been a pleasure, Marty, having you here on the show. You've certainly caused a few laughs, and also been very sincere about a lot of your positions and so forth. So, Dave, thank you, and we want to thank our cameraman in the back there, and I want to thank the callers. Thank you very much for your calls, and until next week, good evening.